There was a crooked man, and he walked a crooked mile. He found a crooked sixpence upon a crooked stile. He bought a crooked cat, which caught a crooked mouse, and they all lived together in a little crooked house. Have you ever wondered if there's a real-life equivalent abandoned place somewhere in the world to each childhood nursery rhyme or fairy tale? The gingerbread house of Hansel and Gretel, Mother Hubbard's cupboard, or the old woman who lived in a shoe. This real-life house has a story you'd never expect, that's never been fully told. Its real purpose and how it ended up like this is almost as weird as how it appears today as the most crooked abandoned house you've ever seen. Nestled in the rural White Mountains, the area around us was once a major destination for not just sufferers of hay fever, but also the fashionable elites of society. In fact, it was once thought that hay fever itself was an affliction only for the rich, as it became so closely intertwined with their holidays. Over the decades, grand hotels would appear for their use and then fade away, with only a few examples, like Mount Washington Hotel, now before you, surviving today. Founded in 1774, a small mountain town would begin to quickly become a destination on the route to places like the Old Man of the Mountain and Mount Washington. Located centrally to both places, by the early 1800s, it soon began to grow. At the time, only horse-drawn mail coaches gave access to the nearby area, running 3 times daily to town. However, to ease access, new junctions, and finally a nearby rail line was added in 1879, connecting it to Maine, New York, and Boston. 2 years later, the construction of 5 new train stations and branches was undertaken. The trains would then run to town as many as 10 times daily, with coaches arriving at them to pick up passengers and send them to each hotel. In time, the local hotel's guests would include Presidents Grant, Harding, Taft, Theodore Roosevelt, and Hayes, and also authors like Robert Frost, Helen Hunt Jackson, and Thornton Burgess. As the railroad came, a construction boom would soon also cause well over 30 hotels to appear and compete for guests with new luxury offerings and accommodations. The founding of these hotels was driven by the wealthy seasonal hay fever sufferers, who until the occurrence of antihistamines used the fresh mountain air to alleviate their symptoms. Along with the new hotels, soon came the cottages of the rich built in the nearby hills for people like P.T. Barnum of circus fame. Barnum would coin the yearly coach parade where guests would create ostentatious carriages and drive them through town as the second greatest show on earth. From these coaches, decked in ribbons, silks, and flowers, often drunk guests would blow trumpets and ascend the nearby mountains, sometimes overturning on the steep roads and cliffs with occasional fatalities. Of the over 30 hotels in town, they varied in size from the huge Sinclair and the Mount Washington House to smaller hotels like Strawberry Hill, Howard House, Turner's Tavern, Parkview, Mount Agassiz, Fabian House, Thayer's Inn, Centennial House, Altamonte, Alpine House, Highland House, and the Uplands. As these expanded in number, a small community of new Jewish proprietors would become a feature of the local culture, much like in the Catskills of New York. However, the largest of the new hotels was by far the Maplewood, which was built over a smaller building dating from 1816. This massive new hotel opened in 1876 under Isaac Cruft and was able to house 750 guests of the total 4,000 who would visit town yearly. The huge 5-story building was advertised as the social and scenic center of the White Mountains, and the hotel would grow over the years, expanding to include a casino and a dance floor, bowling alleys, theater, and golf course, as well as farms, cottages, and in 1881, our crooked abandoned building would enter the scene as the hotel's own train station, equally as lavish as the resort. In 1891, a covered deck area was added to the new station, and in 1896, electric lighting. In 1893, thieves broke into the station but found nothing of value. The hotel's guests would stay for long periods from June to September and first stopped at the station to be taken by coach to the hotel. Ads at the time expounded on its virtues. The location is beautiful, the scenery is unsurpassed, the drives are charming, the air is marvelous, the table is first class, the music is the best, the casino is commodious, an ideal reason for an ideal vacation. Some years ago, a Boston merchant, overtaxed by business cares and suffering from loss of health, was recommended to try a season. He returned in the autumn, well, completely invigorated and restored, but each season finds him with his family at their mountain home. Thankful for this marvelous and unexpected restoration, with his ample means, he determined to prepare accommodations where others could have the comforts of home without the expense of fitting up an establishment of their own. The house was enlarged and placed in perfect repair, bowling and billiard saloons erected, and other games and amusements improvised for the entertainment of guests. The farm was placed under the charge of a competent person for whom the commodious farmhouse, barns, dairies, stables, and extensive outbuildings were erected. From this farm, guests are daily supplied during the summer with the very best of everything fresh from the fields. Green beans, corn, peas, beans, and garden sauce, growing at 1 hour, are bountifully served upon the table at the next. Fresh cream, butter, and eggs of home production are furnished, not at fabulous hotel prices, but at fair and reasonable rates. One of the finest and most picturesque views of Mount Washington and others of the White Mountain group is from the veranda of this house. While the vicinity abounds in delightful drives, it is supplied with never-failing spring water and is but 1 1/4 miles from the depot. From the station, the train continues along the bank of the river. Despite the booming industry, by 1924, with the advent of cars, people now no longer needed to use trains, and the fate of the great hotels of the mountains was sealed. They soon began to close and vanish into memory. The rail line discontinued operation, and the main station was modeled into a cottage after being sold and was used for building materials in 1935. Yet the massive hotel would struggle on despite most others closing, until in January 1963, it burst into flames and was a total loss. Somehow, through it all, the Grand Hotel station remained, empty of bustling passengers, slowly rotting away, becoming more and more crooked and surrounded by trees by the year, and eventually becoming the lone and forgotten place standing before us. Now cut off from all roads, this crooked house lies on a wooded path that was once the very rail line from which weary passengers would disembark to be carried by stagecoach to the hotel. The steering window above us lies just below the steeple that once topped the station. A carved portico remains above the doorway. A few overturned chairs punctuate a sea of splintered and jagged boards that were once the floor. To the left, a stairway leans at a slant upwards. The bottom is broken and uneven.
Yeah. And considering how crooked the chimney is,
The view of the nearby bare frame shows just how precarious the house now is, with all the weight centered on one side where the stair and chimney lie, seemingly the only major things holding it up.
I guess that's the floor. It's the bottom of the stairs. I couldn't actually step on that floor.
While there are a few tags, somehow over 100 years abandoned, the house has remained mostly undamaged. Out the front door, a path tracks the old passenger route. The sheer angle of the building is disorienting. Below us, buried under leaves, are scattered planks that once formed the raised train platform connected to the station itself. This protruding window bay is walled off from the rest of the house and may have been a ticket booth. Inside, the plaster clings to the walls, and most lathes still hold, while it's apparent some wood has been salvaged. We explore the idea of going up the stairs, but they seem very unstable, and a present danger exists in adding more weight to this barely held up side of the house.
I mean, I'm contemplating stepping in on the stairs, but it would all just go. Yeah, that's what I mean, because it's all leaning that way. It's all, yeah. I just, yeah, well, there's a reason. I mean, the brick chimney is tilted. Plus, all the floors are bad, so I wouldn't even be able to get off the stairs. I mean, it's tempting, but I would be fucked. Look at the chimney. It's just curved. It's like crooked and then curved. That's it. Yeah. It, it's like, I swear the camera is not crooked.
The insanely tilted and twisted chimney further illustrates the pressures exerted on the house.
I mean, even as soon as you get to the top of the stairs, there's a hole in the floor. Yeah, I mean, there's no standing on that. It's just like lab work and rot. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think that's a window, maybe outside. I'm gonna take a window outside.
The craziest thing about this house is that any way you approach it, it stays just as ominous looking, just as crooked.
Golf ball. Golf ball.
There's something about a crooked house that is inherently creepy, and this one reminds me very much of the building that I grew up in, especially its lone-peaked window. This house would later become the popular haunted house of my town once it was abandoned. It also never had electricity, running water, or plumbing. One day as a child, I sat at this very window and pawed through piles of National Geographic magazines, and I saw a photo in it of a house that I would play nearby while at my grandmother's rural neighborhood in New England. It was that very house that first sparked my interest in abandoned places. I always wanted to go inside it, but I never did, and that regret has taken me in time on a journey to reclaim the memories that I never made. The failed preservation fight over the house a few years later to keep it from being demolished also reminded me of the importance of documenting these places before they became only a part of the local folklore. The house we've shown you today has been no exception as a last dying ember of the great mountain hotel's raging heydays. Its time is almost over. I'm glad to have been able to find and share its story with you before it too is gone forever. Join us next time as we head further into the mountains, exploring a series of lost ghost towns. Until next time. This is breaking news from the Desertify Urbex network. We've just received word that a nude singing man in Scotland has issued a set of demands in a pre-recorded message.
Yes, I am the singing man of Ravenscraig. Wow, the power of YouTube. Okay, so, recently, I found a video on YouTube. I was just double checking it was me.
It all started when our mobile exploration news team first encountered them in an abandoned castle and quickly became trapped. Please be advised that the footage you're about to see contains graphic singing that may shock, offend, or upset you. I try not to lose it, but there's a man stripping down to nothing to the left with his back turned in the archway leading to the exit. He's completely blocking the only way out that doesn't involve a big drop. After what seems like an eternity with us hiding in the stairwell or side rooms, he still hasn't left. We stay out of view to avoid startling him and don't record in his direction in case he turns around and sees us. It's incredibly awkward. The minutes drag on and he shows no sign of leaving. If you can figure out what he is singing, do let us know.
I was singing Flower of Scotland, and I remember that day because I remembered me saying to myself, I heard someone, but I didn't want to look just in case it was one of my friends just trying to scare me. So yeah, I was singing Flower of Scotland, and this video has been the greatest video I've ever seen. So I just want to say props to the guys that were filming the video. I really liked it, and like, props you guys for not laughing, even though when I spat, you guys were laughing. So yeah, I'm not going to sing Flower of Scotland for you guys because I'm not doing that again. Actually, if I get to 700 subscribers, I'm not that much off, I will sing Flower of Scotland in Ravenscraig Castle, okay?
Challenge accepted. For more abandoned explorations of lost America, click here. Or here for our adventures in an abandoned Scotland.